Hello everyone. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a card using watercolor. Still a large floral. I will never give up my love of large florals. I'm using this newer stamp set from Altenew. This is the Stamp and Paint One Happy Bouquet set. This is one of the sets that does not have any sort of like layering stencil, etc. Talked about this a lot in videos. I am very much loving the layering stencils we have now. I don't know, it's therapeutic. However, I've also said I will never not love coloring. Watercolor, alcohol markers, whatever. So I used this set and I watercolored, specifically using some of Altenew's tube watercolors. And yeah, when it comes to watercolor, there's a ton of options, and I've done a ton of videos. I've watercolored with like water reactive inks. I've watercolored with distress oxide inks, distress inks, both of which are water reactive. Altenew inks, Simon's Stamp inks. I have watercolor palettes, watercolor tubes. I like to color, and I like to have like a million options of watercolor. Do you need all the options? No. Do I? No, I just like them. So anyway, I made a card. I did some watercolor. Of course, I added a couple things of splatter. I also pulled up my Better Press for the sentiments. That was fun. And yeah, I'll also put a link to my playlist using the Better Press in the end screen at the very end of the video. And yeah, that's enough random chatter from me. Links to everything I used will be in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It's what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, enables me to keep bringing out content. And let's get into making the card. So, like I said and mentioned, this One Happy Bouquet set is big. I like it. Yeah, I do. I really do. So the main image of this cluster of florals is large. You could definitely do larger cards with this. This watercolor piece of cardstock that I'm using is 5x7. So just to give you an idea, like you could do 5x7 or even larger cards with a stamp this large. I am planning on cutting mine down. I make A2 size cards, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. That's just my little comfort zone, you know? So I lined it up in my stamp wheel, lined up the stamp. I used my anti-static powder tool on the watercolor paper. And then I'm going to stamp this image with Altenew's Obsidian Pigment Ink. Now, I use the anti-static powder because I'm going to clear heat emboss over this ink. You don't need to, especially with an image like this, that was literally designed to be, watercolor. Like it's a little more open, a little more flowy. Like it's not super contained, if that makes sense. And I talk about heat embossing my images before I watercolor because it creates the raised edges and it's like little bumper pads and it keeps things a little more contained. And so that's why with this set, it's not necessary, but at the same time, I still think it helped a bit because I am impatient. For all my love of watercolor, technically watercolor is an exercise in patience. Yeah. But it's a good thing. And that's why Amy needs to do this more often. Really. I need like watercolor therapy every day. Every day. But still. I covered the image with clear embossing powder, melt it with my heat tool. So it'll be raised, smooth, melted, little bit shiny. And for the actual watercoloring, like I said, I'm going to use some of the Altenew tube watercolors. Now, if you are unfamiliar with tube watercolors, you can do like searches. There's a plethora of info online, but basically it's just watercolor in a tube. You can use it like I'm going to show here, where I'm just going to put it on a palette and use it like directly. Or you can fill, little containers to make a palette, because with watercolor, the beautiful part of it is you can re-wet it. So even what I put in my palette, after it's completely dry, I can reuse it. Now this is the Altenew like Petal Palette. This is ceramic. This is really nice. I really do like this palette. I did a video on it when it was first released a couple months ago. I forget. Hopefully I'll be able to find it and I'll link it in the end screen. I did wash it out though, because I had this whole palette just filled with like just random mixes and all the things I was doing, and I wanted a fresh start. So I just took it to the sink and cleaned it out. And because it's ceramic, it does clean. Like you can't, like there's no staining, and that is kind of nice. Even though, like I say, perfection's overrated. We don't need to keep our supplies pristine, but I can't not admit that there is something really satisfying with this palette being just, look at it. Anyway, so my little tube watercolors. I'll hold up the specific colors I used today. It's Toluidine red, primary yellow, olive green, Prussian blue, Quinacridone violet, Quinacridone magenta. And I put just the teensiest little dabs in this palette. Like I was not even squeezing the tubes. I basically just took the lid off and then just pressed it to the palette. You don't need much. That's one of the nice things about watercolor tubes is if you are a card maker, tubes of watercolor are going to last you an insane amount of time, if not like forever, because you just don't need much at all. I can't say as to how long because people ask me that a lot, like how long anything's going to last when it comes to watercolor palettes, etc. Because I have so many. I have multiple lifetime supplies, y'all. Like I like it. Anyway, for the actual watercoloring, as it's just my nature, you can just use the colors like as is. Dip your brush in them, add a bit of water, paint, you're good. I like to mix colors. It's just fun. So for this first bit, I mixed the Toluidine red and the primary yellow together. I added just a hint of the red to it, so it warms it up a little bit, gives it a little bit of an orange undertone, but it's still yellow. And then I use two brushes. I have one brush that has all the color in it, and then the other brush is just what I'm using to apply clean water to each area. And then I drop in the color, and then I use that more sort of clean brush to pull the color out. And then I go on to the next section. So I did the petals first on those two top flowers, and I did the flower center. And then I cleaned off my smaller brush here, and then I'm going to start mixing more color. So this time I mixed the red and the magenta together just to give it more of a kind of warm red, because that Toluidine red is just like a very, I would just call it like a solid red. It's kind of got like more of a, almost like an orange undertone to it. So adding the magenta to it, it just makes it more of like a pink. And if I could have added a tiny bit of purple to it and made it more of a fuchsia. So like I said, I like to mix. It's just fun, honestly. It just is. So I did the same thing with the purple. I mixed the Quinacridone violet with the Prussian blue. And you get that like blue, purple, like almost like sort of indigo-y, just gorgeous. Gorgeous. And this little cluster, because I also was aware that I most likely was going to cut a fair bit of this off when it's time to trim this panel down. So for that, I just literally slapped the color on. And then to make brown, complementary colors. So red and green make mud. So that's what I did. I mixed the red with the olive green. I added a hint of the yellow just cuz, and that gave me a nice muddy brown color, which I used for the flower centers. So just working my way around, and I work in sections because since a lot of these stamp lines, like I said, are open, I don't want colors running into each other. I want each area to dry. So I jump around so that each area can dry and I don't have, the red running into the yellow, purple running into green, etc., etc. So then for this large flower, I mixed kind of the red and the yellow together. I added a bit of magenta. I even added just a hint of the Prussian blue, just to tone it back a bit, to make this kind of orange shade. And this one, just this mixture and the way the color went down, I was really happy with it. Honestly, as usual, I was winging it. I was making this in the middle of the night and just doing my thing. And like I was kind of joking about, but it is true, like watercolor therapy. It is satisfying. I will also say, and I've mentioned this many times, what like not only is watercolor a exercise in patience, but it takes time. When I first started watercoloring, it was a struggle. It's like why is it doing this, or why is this, why is that? You do need to practice. You really do. Just it is paper, stamp some images, or just paint without stamps. Even just get some watercolor, a few little brushes, and just play. And you need to experiment. You need to. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get at it. Because that was the thing for me, is just the struggle and everything. But over the years, like watercolor, I'm now just comfortable. I don't consider myself, I'm not an expert by any means. Like I still have a million things I can learn and improve upon, one of which being patience. But I'm very comfortable with it now. It doesn't intimidate me like it used to. Now, it's one of my favorite ways to color. Stamped images, or do backgrounds, do watercolor washes, things like that. I enjoy it. It's not intimidating, but that came over just time. So yeah, I just don't let it intimidate you, is all I'm saying. Because it does feel intimidating in the beginning, but the more you do it, it's fun. It's fun. I love it. I love watercolor. It is, yeah, yeah. I have no complaints. Hence the million products I have, accumulated and collected and curated over the years to do watercolor with. And you don't need a ton, really. It's just, it is nice though that we have a million options. So, anywho, I went in and did just a second layer. And with the second layer, it is more color, less water. And I am not wetting the area first. You see, I go directly in with the color. I'm not wetting it like I did for the first layer, where I was doing wet on wet, because it was apply clean water, then drop in the color. Now I'm doing wet on dry, where I'm going in with just the color, and then I pull it out with that clean brush, which is just damp, just to kind of soften things up a bit. And this is going to add more depth, a little bit more shading, that sort of a thing. As usual, I'm not following any light source, anything. I just put it wherever I think it's going to look nice. And another thing, specifically with like this set, it's kind of true to how Altenew has their packaging. On the inside of the packaging of the stamp set, there's a lot of watercolor examples, and that is always nice. I've talked about this. I love that with stamp packaging. Different brands will do that. They'll have a fully colored image on the packaging, and I love that as a reference. So often I'll just follow that. I will take the guide, or just where they've placed shadows, or the colors they've used, things like that. And it makes it easier, and it is especially nice if you're newer to it, or if, like me, you are tired, you don't have a lot of brain bandwidth going on. So yeah, I was kind of loosely following the guide they had inside the packaging. It's like layer 1, layer 2, and I was like, ooh, I like how that looks. So I was kind of somewhat following that. The only thing I didn't do 2 layers on was the greenery, because I was just really happy with how that ended up looking. I mixed the olive green with a bit of the primary yellow, and then this I did wet on wet, so wet each area with the clean water first, and then I drop in the green, and then I pull that out with the just damp brush. And just the way this happened to go onto the watercolor paper, I was really happy with it. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to mess with it. Because, again, like I said, I was doing this in the middle of the night, and I was like, I know if I'm going to add a second layer to the greenery, I'm probably going to wreck it. So I just created a really nice gradient. So, and I also didn't mix. Normally I would, my rules, when I'm talking to y'all about different greenery, whether it's die cuts, stamps, whatever, mix up the shades of green, Normally that's what I should have done here, but I just went with it. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. Besides the fact most of my rules are arbitrary. It's just is what it is. So once I was done coloring, I just used a rectangle wafer die to trim this down, so it ends up being smaller than an A2 card front. And then I pulled out some of Altenew's Vanilla Cream cardstock and cut an A2 size panel, so 4¼ by 5½ inches. That's going to be like my card front. I didn't adhere these together. I want to add splatter, but I was like, still in the back of my mind, I was like, do I want to add like other things? Do I want to wrap some twine? I wasn't sure. So I was like, I'm not going to adhere these together yet. I'm just going to like place them one on top of each other, stuck it in my splat box, and then I'm just going to add splatter. So my go-tos, my white gouache and my black gouache, put those onto my palette. And for the white gouache, added some water to thin it out a bit, get it to a nice consistency. And then I fairly heavily splatter this all over the card front here. And I even add a little bit more water just to thin it out even more. And then splatter that really well. And then with the black gouache, when I thin this out, I'm going to go in with a much lighter hand with this because the black gouache is very intense. This is very stainy. And this is what I was talking about, like that ceramic palette, that Petal Palette, like how nice it is and doesn't stain. This little plastic palette, not the same because it's plastic. It's not ceramic. So it does stain heavily. I'm okay with that. I just be wary with the black gouache. It is heavily pigmented. So the minute I'm done with it, wash out my brush, wipe off my palette, and we're good to go. So for the sentiments, I'm using this is the newer One Go Solid Sentiment Strips 2. It was like last year or the year before, I forget when. The first One Go Solid Sentiments Better Press Plate was released by Altenew. Love it. I've used it in videos. And then there's a coordinating wafer die. And I remember mentioning, like, I hope down the road they come out with more. They listened and came out with this one. So this one is like kind of celebration sentiments. And like I said, I'll link to my Better Press playlist at the end of this video. I love my Better Press. My only issue is I literally need more space. I need more space to have all the things out so I can use them more often. Anyway, I put the press plate onto my Better Press, and I'm just inking it up with Altenew's. This is Andromeda Fresh Dye ink. I've shown this in other videos. I really like. I've used pretty much all the inks I have with the Better Press, like here and there, just experimenting. I have yet to find something that doesn't work. And I inked it up, and I had some white cardstock taped to the clear plate of my Better Press. And then you put the clear plate on top of the Platinum, I think that's what it's called. I always forget the names. Anyway, and then ran it through my Platinum 6 die cut machine. And perfection. Perfection. I didn't ink up this entire plate. I could have, but I only wanted a couple sentiments from this. And because I was specifically using purple ink, like if I'd been using like black ink or hot foiling this, I would have done the entire thing. But because I was specifically using purple ink, I only kind of inked up the bottom portion of where like the sentiments I specifically wanted. And then I used the coordinating wafer die to die cut everything. And those little scraps I'm going to use them for dimension. So it's all good. And then I'm going to keep these stored together. I just keep them in a little storage pocket. So with the original set, all those extra sentiments from the last times I used that set, stick them all in there so that I can just grab it and go. So after I had the sentiments I wanted, I did decide to add some baker's twine because I had this pretty purple baker's twine in my stash, which I have almost used up. So I wrapped that around the panel and then used my reverse tweezers to hold that knot closed or like hold it tight while I fiddle and make the bow and get it the way I want it. Because baker's twine can be a little finicky since it's twisted threads. So got the bow the way I wanted it. And then I can trim off the excess. And then for my little sentiment, I just took one of the little scrap pieces. I could have just adhered them back to back. They're all the same size. But I trimmed it down just a smidge, just so that it kind of makes the like main sentiment like float a little bit. It looks like it's floating. And then adhered those together with a little bit of craft tacky glue. And I only added one layer because this is heavyweight. This is 120 pound cardstock. So I didn't feel the need. Plus, I'm going to pop up this watercolor panel with foam tape as well. So I'm going to have a fair bit of dimension going on. So I got that adhered into place. And then I'm going to put foam tape. So this is Altenew's dimensional foam tape. This is the 16th of an inch, which is like your standard sort of foam tape. And it's the 1 inch wide, which love. Honestly, it makes it faster. It's just faster. That's all. So I put that on the back and then pop that onto the vanilla cream panel there. And then for my card base is a top folding A2 white note card. So I've got the inside of the card lined up in my stamp wheel, and I had cleaned off the stamp, and I'm going to line that stamp up similar to how it's going to appear on the card front. So I'm going to get that lined up, and then I'm going to ink up the stamp, and I'm going to stamp that with the vanilla cream ink. So everything's kind of matchy-matchy, and it just gives that extra pattern to the inside of the card. So stamp that to the inside, and then I'm going to adhere that other pressed sentiment onto the inside of the card. So I'll just adhere that into place with some craft tacky glue. And then once that's adhered, I can then adhere the card front to the card base. So get the sentiment in place, fold my card closed, reinforce that fold with my little Teflon bone folder, which took me a second to find. It was hiding under things on my desk. What else is new? So reinforce that, adhere the card front to the card base, and then as a final little embellishment, I'm using these gem sparkles from Altenew. This is the red Jasper pack, and the two lightest shade, the light and the medium shade, I was like, those are meant to be with these colors. So I'm going to just peel and stick because they're all self-adhesive. So I can just peel them off the backing sheet and then press them into place. And I end up changing my mind. I used the large one. I just tried to kind of tuck it under the panel here at the bottom of the card, and I ended up not liking that at all. I was like, it just looked weird. So you can remove these. Be very careful when you do it because the adhesive is pretty strong. And I've found that in the past that sometimes if I'm just oh, don't like this, and I quickly try to yank it off my card, it'll rip the cardstock. So I was very careful about removing the large one. I used my little perfect picker, the pointy end there, to just remove it, and then it was fine. So, and then I could replace it with just one of the medium-sized ones, and I was able to just stick this back to the sheet, and I can use it on a different project. So they are removable. You just got to be careful about it. So once I got that placed, this card is complete. So like I mentioned in the beginning, I'll have links to all of the things in the description box below the video. And then in the end screen, I'll link to my Better Press playlist, and I'll try and find that other video I did showing the perfect palette and watercoloring with the tube watercolors. And yeah, thank you all so much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton, and I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!